Meeting of
A late start
Sorry,
here.
my apologies.
It's the first time he's ever been early. That's usually about the time you're
All
on.
right, we're adjourned, all done. Thank you for
He doesn't
coming.
get to swearing in foreign languages right either.
I'd like to call the 7 o'clock meeting of the Coastside County Water District meeting to order. All right, could we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Director Coverdale?
Present.
Vice President Michelson?
Here.
Director Flint?
Here.
Director Glassberg?
Here.
President Reynolds?
Here. Ken, could you lead us?
I would be honored. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
All right, do we have any public comment slips? Welcome, members of the public, thank you for coming. There's slips in the back if you'd like to fill those out and turn them in. Have any? Ken has a fan club, all right.
Just a friend from a former organization.
Perfect.
Yeah. How are you? Welcome.
Do we have any directors who would like anything pulled on the consent calendar? All right. Can we have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
Moved.
Maybe the
Sorry?
public hearing comes before the consent calendar. Item 4.
Did I mention I broke my glasses and these I actually can't? Okay. Oh, you mean it's, yeah, sorry. Thank you.
He's the only getting warmed up.
I like the pace though.
Yep. Yeah, we were halfway, and it was 8 o'clock. We were done.
Already at 8, yeah?
All right. So now we'll start the public, so no public comments. We'll move to the public hearing for the Coastside County Water District Ordinance 2014-1, amending the Coastside County Water District Indoor Water Use Efficiency Ordinance.
Good job.
The glasses.
So you're gonna open the hearing? to
Yeah, I
the
gotta find the
public?
section.
Number
I
4.
can't see it.
I thought you were kidding.
No, I really did break them, and I really, these, the backup glasses are not bifocals.
Now I know why you were worried about it saying Water Solutions on your shirt.
Yeah, really? I know what he's.
This is bad advertising.
Still saying the pledge.
All right.
The staff has a presentation, brief presentation that we can do before the public hearing is opened, or whatever.
Why don't we start with the presentation, and then we can open the public comment.
Okay. Okay, so basically, staff is requesting that the board consider the proposed amendments to the existing indoor water use efficiency ordinance. The changes that staff is proposing are highlighted in the proposed ordinance, which is attached to the staff report. It's highlighted in red, so you can tell which parts will be changed. And basically, we're asking for the revisions so that they meet the changes in the California 2013 plumbing code to meet additional specification changes to the EPA water standards program, and just to do some housekeeping type items for lessons learned since we've been enforcing the ordinance since 2011. So just tweaking some of the wording and the definitions and things like that. So most of the changes can be seen in section 5, which is page 6 of the ordinance, which has the indoor water use efficiency table. That's a good place to start. So it shows for kitchen faucets that it's going from 2.2 gallons per minute at 60 psi to no greater than 1.8 gallons per minute at 60 psi. Utility faucets is the same as kitchen faucets. There is a new standard for metering faucets for commercial, or what we call non-residential, for a maximum of 2.5 gallons per cycle. And we're proposing to eliminate the clothes washer standard. And the reason for that is because on new construction, it's what I've found is developers rarely provide a clothes washer. And there's been a lot of efficiency standards at the federal level for improving the efficiency of clothes washers. And there's also, we have an incentive program that new construction is eligible for rebates. So I found that it really wasn't necessary to have clothes washers in the ordinance. Then I just kind of added some wording for commercial refrigeration about having cooling water should be recycled or recirculated. I think that definition. So if there are any questions that you have on any of the changes, I can answer your questions.
Just a clarification on metering faucets, is it supposed to be 0.25 gallons per cycle or 2.5?
0.25.
0.25.
Ken, did you have any?
I think that the proposed modifications look great. Personally.
Chris?
No, this is very timely, considering lack of rainfall.
Yeah.
Nothing to really add. other than
Okay.
it's-
No, that was my only question.
Okay. Kathleen, I have one question. One question I had was where we reference on page 3, we've changed the reference from 2007 to 2013. Would it be a further advance to take that out and to replace that with the current edition? So if they come out,
That is the current 2013.
but next year it'll be obsolete. You know, each time they come out with an edition, then we reference the old one. Whereas if we say the most current edition, then when the plumbing code comes out with a 2015 edition, you could use that rather than them saying, oh, I don't have to comply with the 2015 because your ordinance references the 2013. So that would be a way of putting it in that we would automatically be whichever standard was most current, yours or the plumbing code.
Well, with every change of the plumbing code, the changes don't necessarily impact what's in my ordinance, so we wouldn't necessarily automatically change it, when they come with a new plumbing code, unless it affected what was in my ordinance. But Patrick probably give a better answer regarding why the wording's in there to begin with.
Well, I think that the ordinance could include the most recent edition. Right now, it does include appendices, supplements, and anything that might be adopted in connection with the plumbing code. But I think it'd be okay to say the 2013 edition or the most current edition. We can work on the language to make it read smoothly, but I think that would be okay.
I noticed that the state drinking water code has been changed. It used to say that you had to disinfect to AWWA C651 and then dash the edition number. And then they changed that to say the most current edition, meaning every time the AWWA standard gets changed, then that is invoked by the state law, so that they didn't have to keep the state law updated every time the standard was updated. And I got it, it was like, okay, that makes sense. So I was thinking maybe we'd copy what the state's doing there, learn from them and use that here.
So what are you suggesting as far as the wording is to remove the reference to 2013 and?
Well, we're following Patrick's suggestion. We'd leave 2013 and then just add the words "or the most current edition."
Yeah, I think that's fine.
A question about that, would that then have the potential of changing the numbers on the chart that's a part of the proposal. In other words, down the road, if there are changes, say in 2015, is there the potential that those changes could change what's on this chart and then create, I mean, maybe there's a way of putting language in so that it's clear that it would be current with whatever the newest code is as opposed to what's on the chart if the chart changes.
Yeah, I don't, and I'll jump in here, Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think any changes to the plumbing code would automatically change the chart because the provision that deals with the plumbing code is basically saying that we don't have the power to enforce it, but we reference it. So I think it's, if we wanted to reference the other one, but I think the numbers are the district's numbers, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so they would stay even if there's a change in the plumbing code?
Correct.
Great.
If we wanted to change the numbers, the staff would come back to the board.
We would need to modify the ordinance.
Okay, so we could add the wording or the most current addition to that paragraph on page 3.
Is there a reason that the pre-rinse spray valves actually went up in GPM?
Yes, what I was using there is the EPA water sun standard. I think the 1.15 turned out to be a little on the low side, especially in areas of lower pressure. So the 1.28 gallon per minute standard performs better, and restaurants seem to be happier with that. So that's why I'm using the EPA standard. Actually, in the plumbing code, it's still 1.67 gallons per minute. So it's more strict than the plumbing code, but we've increased it from the last revision board.
Thanks. Well, I'd like to move that we adopt the modified.
You need to open the public hearing.
Yep.
See if there's anybody from the public who'd like to
All
comment.
right. Do we have any comments from the public? Well, let's open the public hearing at this time. And do we have any public who would like to comment? No pressure, guys. All right, so we'll close the public hearing at this time. And then we're set to any further discussion. And do we have a motion?
We do, but can I ask a question?
Please.
If we were trying to use the water as wisely as possible, do we have any place outside of this ordinance, which is about indoor water use efficiency standards, to encourage exterior water use efficiency standards? Or would it be appropriate in this ordinance to make comments or recommendations or encouragements? And so the kinds of things I'm thinking about is, on-site stormwater management to take advantage of water that we're getting naturally. Or, for years it's been the standard to run rainwater leaders to the curb and gutter and into the stormwater system. And so I'm just wondering, is there another ordinance that we could have an influence on where we might make those comments?
Yes, if the district wanted to go in that direction, I would recommend having a separate ordinance for outdoor. And then we would have to work closely with legal counsel because we have limited authority. And we have discussed it in the past, exactly what we have authority to require and not require in an outdoor type ordinance regarding landscaping and irrigation and that sort of thing. So we could pass a separate outdoor ordinance, but it would take, we would have to be very careful about what we included and make sure we had authority to.
Kathleen, could you explain, just for my education, the benefit of having them as separate ordinances? Because I was envisioning a developer or a builder would come to you and say, hey, we want to build, could you walk through our the water conservations you require? And wouldn't that be sort of, well, it's our water conservation ordinance and it covers indoor and outdoor, but you've been very clear about separating them. Could you spend a minute on explaining the advantages of separating those as a separate ordinance?
Well, depending on what you included in it, it would be fairly extensive, so, it's hard for people to work through a very large document and ordinance when they're looking for something specific. So traditionally, I've seen them as separate ordinances. We could do it as one ordinance, but that's just how I'm used to seeing it, and how I think, and then it's easier to amend separate ordinances as the different laws change, and but so that's just my personal preference.
Okay.
To have them as separate.
I'm happy to chime in a little bit here as well. And I'm going to drop back a little bit to AB 1881, which you might not recall the number, but that was implemented 2010, 2009, something like that. And that dealt with some of the issues we've been grappling with in this ordinance, and other agencies, for example, cities have been grappling with in their ordinances. Now, cities have broader powers than a county water district. And AB 1881 was essentially the state's model water efficiency, water conservation ordinance, and it applied only to counties and cities. It does not apply to a county water district. And if a county or a city didn't adopt their own ordinance, then the state ordinance automatically went into effect. And that dealt with both indoor and outdoor water use efficiencies. Now, what we need to grapple with here as a county water district is, and what we did do in working with Kathleen on this ordinance, is this ordinance is triggered to where a customer would need to come to the water district to get something. For example, a water connection or an increased water connection, and that's what triggers some of the things in this ordinance. The delicate balance that Kathleen was referring to is we, as a county water district, are not a land use planning agency like a county or a city. And there's these circles, this is just my view, there's these two circles where here's a county water district, here's a land use planning agency, and then there might be some overlap in the middle, and that's the delicate balance that we need to strike before we as a county water district try to regulate or adopt regulations that deal with land use planning.
Okay, good answer, thanks.
So I would like to move that we adopt the proposed amendments to the Coastside County Water District Indoor Water Use Efficiency Ordinance.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Could we have a roll call?
Sir. Director Coverdell?
Yes.
Vice President Michelson?
Yes.
Director Flint?
Aye.
Director Plaster?
Aye.
President Reynolds?
Aye.
As a follow-up comment, if I may? Maybe what we could do as an agency, because we don't really have authority to enforce some aspects of things that we might think are good ideas. I mean, maybe there could be a best management practices handout to somebody who's getting ready to build or ready to make improvements or, to their landscaping or make improvements for their residents. And maybe in that area, we could utilize, the 1825, or 1881, 81?
81.
81, recommendations. And, it wouldn't have to be a big glitzy 14-page deal, but it might be a way to at least have some influence, encourage some good practices. So I just would like to encourage that we think about that as an agency, or look for a way maybe to communicate
I
that.
think that's a really good idea. I would strongly encourage that. I know, yeah.
Or at least some cross-referencing between the city and the county and the district as well. Because, another thing I always worry about when you adopt new regulations, you may not be necessarily enforcing the same regulations that another agency has in place. And there's sometimes some discrepancy there. So I would rather be us referencing existing code or regulations that are in place already, just so that we're consistent.
That's it, that's good.
Yeah, we have two different jurisdictions to worry about, the county and the city, so yeah, it could take a while for us to.
Dave, is there any room there to get cooperation with the sanitary district, and that they stand to benefit by having reduced inflows for them as well?
Boy, that's a, cooperation with the sanitary district is a challenge, has been. I'm not sure that's at the, that would be at the top of their list. Sanitary district has enough capacity for the next century at least, so they're not too worried about capacity.
Okay.
I just need some clarification, because I'm under a tight deadline, since this has to go in the paper, and we only have a weekly paper. So when we I'm assuming when we adopted this revised ordinance, it was with the condition that we make the wording changes regarding the 2013 plumbing code, because I'll have to get that done tomorrow to give it to the paper, so it can be in next week's edition.
So I'd like to amend the approval to say that it will adopt the date changes that as we've discussed. I
To
don't
the
know how
plumbing
to,
code of 2013.
2013.
With
I don't know how
the
to
most
phrase it
current
the best.
edition wording.
So is that the appropriate way to do it?
Yeah.
Have an amendment?
I was under the impression that that's what the board had approved, but if you want to make a clarifying amendment.
Do we
that's-
need it?
Well, if
Patrick?
Kathleen needs clarification, I don't know.
Yeah.
Could,
She's the one gonna do
Patrick,
it.
is that something you could just write out
Yeah,
that
I think we'll
paragraph
go with
for?
Yeah, under the
It's clear in the,
title, California Plumbing Code 2013 edition, then just add, or the most current edition, comma,
We're done.
and the appendices printed
Yeah.
there. I think that would
Perfect.
be fine.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do we have any items in the consent calendar that folks would like to pull?
I reviewed the financial statements, and I found them all in order, including the petty cash statement and the credit card statement. Everything looked in order to me.
Okay, perfect. I worked on the rainfall report and reported less than a 1/16 of an inch on my back porch.
Saving windshield wipers on your plane.
No kidding. All right, then do we have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. Can we do an aye for that, or do we, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, abstentions? Meetings?
I attended the snowpack review committee meeting at the top of the Sierra and found it to be lacking radically. I think it's.
You walked up and walked down.
I think it's amazing you can actually ski it at high elevations, but it's on snow that was manufactured,
Yeah.
and you just kind of wonder that if there isn't snow, where does the water to make snow come from? I was
So-
just trying to figure that out.
One of the Sierra ski resorts has stopped snow production because they don't have any more water for snowmaking. They have 10 inches of snow, and they can't make any more because they're through their allotment of water. Chris?
Jackson Hole has snow. It was great.
Nice.
Okay. Now I have envy.
Well, I would just like to thank the general manager for taking me on a tour of the facilities. We went on the 19th of December. Very impressive, you know. It really is a model of efficiency. So,
How much of it did you see?
everything except the tanks down by Alvis. So we got around. We went up Pilocitos Creek and over the reservoir and all over the place. It was great.
Well done.
Yeah.
You saw the pump station? Pretty amazing, huh?
It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's awesome, actually.
I
So
did the
thanks.
same. I don't know how the man got any work done. He was taking us on tours for 2 days, I guess.
My job.
And sewing new jackets.
Yeah,
Right.
Stitching those names in there.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Well, welcome to the board. So, all right. I gave a presentation this morning on the state of California water, and was sobered by the reservoir levels across the state. So that's the consent calendar, meetings attended. General business. Dave, is that you?
Okay, first item of general business is our annual audit. Back here for the fourth time, I think. We have Joe Arch, our auditor, to present his report and answer Director Coverdell's inevitable question.
There's some things you gotta repeat.
It's okay. I'm kind of used to the drill. So we're back again to present the annual audited financial statements. There are a couple of differences from the prior year report. In the financials themselves, our audit report is a little different. We have headings above every paragraph. Content is relatively the same. It's just a little bit more spelled out as to what the responsibilities are and that kind of thing for the financial information. The other thing is in the what is called the communications letter, we did have a finding as a result of the overbilling, which I believe the board is already aware of. We treat that because of the size of the dollar amount, so that's the reason for the finding. We'll do some testing next year when we do the audit next year. If it still exists, then we'll have to raise it a little, but we believe that as a result of the changes in the procedures, it will be covered. And you won't have a problem like that again next year. It's unfortunate that your software can't handle the actual boundaries to correct that issue. As far as the report itself goes, the numbers are relatively, we have these peaks and valleys. You can see that the changes in water rates increase your operating levels. So really, on a year-by-year basis, it seems pretty status quo. Over time, of course, given the problems with the water reserve and everything, 2014 might be a little bit more of a challenge. Anyway, with that, I'm here to answer your questions.
Well, I feel based on the last page, I can't ask that question. So you're relieved.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I just had a comment that I was very pleased to see a positive change in the net position between the 2 years. I know you're not responsible for that, but it's certainly a plus for our general manager and the board in making good decisions that created a positive change.
Well, and the swing was pretty significant.
Yeah, $700,000 or something like that.
That's huge. Any questions? No. Pardon me? Chris?
How many years have you audited us now?
This is, I believe, the fourth year.
And what's the protocol for rotating auditors?
Well, it depends on if we like what they say.
Yeah.
Is there not a standard that you shouldn't have the same guy looking at your books every?
The standard that's been set as of January 1 of 2014 is 6 years.
Okay.
But it resets itself. So, essentially we could do it 6 more years. That's kind of, and the state's adopted a position that, it depends on the audit firm if they have good standing as far as peer review or not.
Right, so there is peer review or,
Yeah.
okay.
We put the audit out to bid 4 years ago, and Joe Arch was the successful, I think we got 3, did we get 3 or 4 proposals? We got several proposals. His was His was the best. There was not a great spread in terms of cost. The audit cost us about $15,000 a year. And we'd been very pleased with Joe's work and our relationship with him and his staff. And when it came around to the fourth year, we thought, well, should we put it out to bid again? And the kind of the counterbalancing concern for us is it's a lot of work for the staff to bring a new auditor up to speed or to bring somebody else in to look at the book. So we decided we'd go another year with Arch.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I actually think that they've done a great job for those 4 years. I really appreciate it. And I was reading on the first page of the independent auditor's report, and it says that the auditor's responsibility is that the standards require that the auditor plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misrepresentation or misstatement. And essentially, even though you've found this issue in our accounting, it wasn't reported as a misstatement. Is that correct?
It was corrected, so it becomes a correcting misstatement. So it's basically, our comment relates to internal control and not the numbers that are reported in the financial statements.
And
If we had, raised the level where we thought the numbers were misstated, then that would have appeared in that report in that you were reading.
And do you feel like we were aware of the issue?
Yeah,
And
you
taking
caught
care of
it,
it?
it's just the timeliness of catching it and getting it adjusted, so.
Right.
um,
And so does that mean we're still doing a great job?
Yeah, it's still fine, it's just.
Where do you write that? I don't know.
Nobody's going to jail, I
We
think.
can't put that in there, it's not part of our responsibility.
I've been working on it 4 years, I can't.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. In reviewing the numbers that we've presented to you, does that include auditing the protocol of our checks and balances as you go through this, or merely auditing the data that's given to you? As an example, if we didn't require 2 signatures on checks, that could be a protocol that was slack, but the checks all looked okay. So that would be my question.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is the report that we have in the back, that's internal control.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the policies and procedures that relate to the numbers that go on the financial statements. So if we notice there was something, and that's actually what our finding is about the internal control, the procedure, and the timeliness with which the procedure corrected the misstatement. So that essentially means that, yeah, you found it, but your process really didn't catch it until after the fact. So what we're saying is basically you set procedures in place to correct it or to prevent it from happening in the future.
Mhm.
So once that happens, anytime we have finding, if we're the continuing auditor, what we would do is next year is we would look at it to see if we corrected it. And if we correct it, then it drops off. And essentially it's considered implemented. The procedures were implemented and you no longer have a column through procedures or internal control procedures that relate to that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Any other questions?
One other question.
Yes.
So, the report the letter in the end that you wrote was to this board. Do you run any tests or observations that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate in a letter to the board of directors, but would be appropriate to general management?
Right, and so what we do is after we come out for our field work, we do an exit conference with the management to discuss items that don't reach the level of getting to the board level. And what those are just, you know, things that we see that there might be a best practice for, there might be something that would help the district in, you know, shore up their internal controls to make better procedures, or even possibly policy types of things that we might see. And those are given to the management, but they don't rise to the level of what you need to hear about. So that way, you know, management can correct them and kind of keep things in place, and you're not unduly alarmed for things that really are insignificant.
I asked that question thinking I knew the answer, but wanting to be sure because that speaks to the depth of the audit.
Mhm.
And I was hoping that you would say what you were saying, because I came in kind of thinking, well, how deep does this audit really go? This is what we're seeing, but in my own experiences,
And if we
I've
do,
wanted to have more detailed feedback from an audit for just the day-to-day practices, so I'm glad to
and
hear
those,
that happens.
those are called deficiencies, but if in total, all those little things added up, they would go into the management. And so we don't just, I mean, I know there are other auditors that will put every control deficiency in the management letter, and that really doesn't help the management do the work.
Right.
And so it kind of gets in the way of actually having an effective internal control structure to catch things.
Good.
Thank you very much, much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Do we accept that report? Do we formally accept that report?
Yes.
I
Okay.
motion to approve.
All right, so we need a motion to,
Move to approve the audit,
all
last
right,
year's audit.
so we have a motion to approve last year's audit. Need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that concludes our financial statement. Dave, I think you're still on for a couple more, yes?
Okay, continuing in our financial vein here. Every quarter, we do a year-to-date financial review. And this quarter's review, which covers half a year through December 31st, has no surprises in it. Basically, our water revenue is fairly close. We're about 2% below budget on water revenue. And I think that's primarily because of the Rocket Farms drop. The Rocket Farms drop, which is related to the note in the audit, really took us by surprise. They started up a large reverse osmosis system and dropped their water, in the course of a couple of months, they dropped their water use from a very consistent, over the years, level of about 2,500 to 3,500 units a month, down to about a tenth of that, 250 to 350. So one of the reasons we had the metering problem was that took us by surprise. We weren't expecting that. And I think that probably accounts for some of that 2% below budget revenue. But that's not bad. We can catch up. We can catch up on that. And water use is trending upwards. Water use is high because people are having to water.
It's very dry,
now,
yeah.
So that's good for revenue, but maybe not for the overall supply. And basically, operating expenses are mostly running below budget. The significant exception is Crystal Springs water purchase and, or San Francisco water purchase and Crystal Springs pumping expenses. Quite a bit higher because we just haven't had enough water in Denniston to run the Denniston plant. I think we have enough to run the Denniston plant at a low level, and we've started it. We have an issue with a pump that's delayed us a little bit, but we plan to start Denniston next week and run it at, we're hoping to run it maybe 300, 350 gallons a minute. So even in the third year of drought, we've had record low rains, we've still got quite a bit of water coming out of the Denniston watershed, which is consistent with what the hydrologists tell us should happen. So that is the quarterly year-to-date financial review. Any questions about that? Good answer? Okay.
Good. Want to take us into the governor's plan?
Well, this is not the governor's plan. I think
Oh,
it's-
this is the-
yeah,
sorry,
I think
this
it's
is
important
the-
to realize that this is the water, basically the water industry plan from the perspective of the Association of California Water Agencies. What California needs to do to have a robust and reliable water system for the future is a matter of huge debate. It's incredibly complicated. There are a lot of interests involved. Aqua felt it was important to put the water utility view out there as opposed to the environmentalist view or, you know, some of the other interests that are weighing in on these issues. And they convened a group of water utilities that have spanned the range of water utility interests, north and south. And with some difficulty, they came up with what they believe to be a statewide water action plan. And all of the agencies they involved ultimately signed on to it. So this is not north versus south. It takes some of that out. It's not a pro-governor's plan. It doesn't endorse the tunnels. It doesn't say no to the tunnels. It doesn't endorse them. I think one of the main tenets is that they want, ACWA would like to see a comprehensive, not just tunnels, but a comprehensive California plan that involves 15 different elements. And that include water use efficiency, storage, a lot of the things that you'd expect. A solution to the delta, although it doesn't specify what the delta solution should be. And they presented this to the governor. It differs from the governor's proposed plan in some significant respects, which I'm not sure I'm sufficiently knowledgeable to explain to you. The reason I thought it would be good for us to endorse this plan, and this is what ACWA is requesting. ACWA is asking that ACWA members, about 400 utility members of ACWA, they're asking that ACWA members endorse the plan to give it some political momentum as these issues play out at the state. Not much of this directly affects Coastside County Water District. We're kind of alone over here. We'd like to think that delta issues don't really affect us, but I think for any water utility, that's probably unrealistic in the long term. We're all going to be caught up in these issues in one way or another. And this is our chance by endorsing this to join with our fellow water utilities in saying, well, we think a comprehensive plan would be the best thing for California. So if we decide to endorse it and pass this resolution, we would pass that along to ACWA and we'd go on the list of supporting agencies. There's no cost or obligation that doing this would impose on the district.
Looking at the reservoir tables and the issues on the table, I do think that it's a reasonable, it's very reasonable for us to agree that action, and this is a priority for the state. I'm extremely concerned that we have 15 different mission statements in one plan. It's going to be a very hard plan to move forward. But that doesn't change the importance of that plan to move forward. And that I think that as the water in the rivers that provide us, both locally but in the Sierras, become stressed as the delta works, I think that it will affect our supply via San Francisco, or San Francisco's supply will be involved, I should say that. I will concede that we are but a minor player in that process, but nonetheless, I would want our voice heard that we feel it's important and lend our support to the legislature taking this problem very seriously.
I think water transfer should move further up the list. I think it should be much higher priority than it is. I mean, it's number 14 in their recommendation, which I think is not very clever. So can we
I
support
didn't
it?
interpret these as being in order of priority.
Well, they're numbered,
Yeah.
so that
But
number
I don't-
is just random number.
No, I don't think it's,
Well, I guess what I would say is that in a support letter, I personally would like us to say that we hope that this isn't the order of received importance. Is that a reasonable thing to add to a support letter?
Do they put any, but this doesn't put any preference on any of it, does it?
they
I
say in the
thought-
preface here, advancing all elements of the plan simultaneously will help secure and maintain support and build a statewide coalition.
Maybe we could get rid of the
But
numbers.
we could sure say that. I mean,
If
if
they
there
have
is,
numbers, it'd be easier to.
I think if there's something we want to add with our support, I think that's definitely something we should do.
Yeah, I would like to say something to that effect. That's just my personal opinion.
I could support that.
Yeah, no problem with that. I had a long chat with Dave this morning about this because, and after the conversation, I felt a lot better and was particularly pleased that that this document represents the water agencies in the state, not the political powers that be in the state, because I've got some real concerns down the road about the fact that we may be a single state, but the southern part of the state really has the political clout simply because they've got the numbers, and therefore they've got more legislators, and the days of the Senate being representative of equal representation from all of the counties went away in the 60s, and so the Senate's no different than the Assembly in that it's simply by population. So I fear political bullying in the future, simply because we haven't really got the numbers of legislators that we would need if a portion of the state really felt strongly about something. So it's nice, at least we have an organization that's saying, let's look at the whole picture, let's not just look at one project.
And I think Dave summed it up very well, that Aqua's worked very hard to try and make sure that the water utilities put aside some of their internals, their squabbling interagency, and say, hey, this is an urgent priority to the state. And I do agree with you that the second door back has some very strong opinions as to who gets the water. And I don't disagree that those are very, very strong opinions, but I think for this statement, we're saying, hey, this is of great urgency to the state in general, and we're concerned that no action is not an acceptable alternative. Patrick will, of course, hammer out the correct legalese to get the state on track, and following the program should take 10 or 15 minutes. But
Purely a policy decision, this action item.
Chris, you want to weigh in?
No, I think we should support this, and for all the above reasons. As far as the numbering, I did feel comfortable that they included simultaneously. I mean, something's got to be number 1, and something's got to be number 14, and I think they're all equally important. And certainly transfers are very, very important. I know that we're already discussing them at the Bosco level, so clearly they're on the table.
Yeah. Very good. Any further discussion?
I guess my question is, once we've taken this action, what's the next step? I mean, we're on the
For
list
us.
now as supporting, but ultimately, will that affect legislation, or is that the goal?
We
I
get,
think that's the goal of the organization, yes.
you've got signs and T-shirts in the next room, right? And then we go to
They've-
Sacramento.
They put out a big push to get the member agencies on board. They've held briefing sessions, number of briefing sessions, one of which I went to up in Oakland I would emphasize it at the conferences. I think everybody recognizes that, you know, something has to happen, and that if we fight about it too much, and if we have these opposing plans that people are advocating, that we'll never get anywhere, and that won't do anybody any good. And so they're trying, while they're saying, well, okay, well, everybody has all these different, you know, the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, the DWR's plan, all this kind of stuff, we need to support and complement and try to kind of move those plans in our direction. I don't think they're, it's really challenging to try to figure out how to get this done. You know, we're first talking about a $12 billion bond issue, and they're talking about downsizing that, and they can't decide when to put it on the ballot, and, you know, they know it's not gonna be enough. So there's just a lot of uncertainty, and this is I think Aqua's attempt to try to move things along. It's certainly I think the current drought situation will add quite a bit of impetus to these efforts. It's hard to be in denial about the problems of California water when an agency up right near the Capitol is about to have its intakes in the air. And San Juan Water District, in a couple of months, if it doesn't rain, will not have any water. It's 200,000 or 300,000 people that get water from that system. And I think last week they asked their board for a stage 5 drought declaration, at least steps leading up to a stage 5 drought declaration. So, you know, it's a pretty current topic, and it may be the drought that helps break the political deadlock. So what happens after this? That'll be interesting to see.
I'd be in favor of endorsing.
I just have one question. I noticed on the list of agencies that have taken action to support this, in Region 5, I noticed San Francisco is not listed. Is there, do you have any information? Is it timing, or do they have a political issue? Or?
But this was just a small group to put together this, not everybody.
Oh.
And so now it's being put out to the whole group. So many of these are the founding partners who sat down at the table and slugged out this, hey, this is important, and we'll focus on bringing this to the attention, and we'll set aside small issues. And then at that point, then it goes out to as many members as can be talked into agreeing. So I wouldn't take the absence of an agency here as a non-acceptance. It's that they weren't involved in the foundation of putting this together.
Okay, thank you.
Type characterize that.
I don't know where San Francisco will come out. They're very politically sensitive in the nature of their water system, the issues they're involved in. I think they're afraid to step in any direction.
I don't know San Francisco's position either, but I can, just to hit on President Reynolds' point, I know that Alameda County Water District adopted this resolution last week, and they're not listed as a Region 5. And they have, you know, they're state water project contractors, so they have, and I know they debated it at the board meeting that I was at last month, because they wrote a letter that was in opposition to one of the, or not opposition, but takes exception to one of the ways these things are described. So they said, well, can we still adopt this even though we took this position? And they came to the conclusion, yeah, this is a more general plan. But they're not on this list, and they just took action last week.
So we'd be second.
Fair enough.
Other agencies are looking at this, just like Coastside.
But nowhere near as important as us.
Of course not.
Do we have a motion to?
I'd like to move that we adopt, is it a resolution?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2014-01.
Are we adopting it or are we endorsing it?
We're going to adopt a resolution to endorse it.
Yes.
Specifically.
In support of.
Supporting.
Do you want me to read all this out, or is it okay? We can just like type up this thing.
We need a second.
Second.
All right. So move. Do we have an ayes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution, I'd rather.
Oh, you'd
we
like,
gotta go
okay,
roll
count,
call.
well,
Okay.
then by all means, call them out.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Director Coverdale?
Aye.
Vice President Michelson?
Aye.
Director Flint?
Aye.
Glassman?
Aye.
Director Reynolds?
Aye. Board committees. Oh, you wanna
Okay,
do this
this
one? You
is,
want me to do this one?
Something we do each year by practice here. It's the prerogative of the president of the board of directors to populate the board's committees. And you have the opportunity to do that. We've given you a summary of what the committees are and what they do, a list of who's on what committees. One correction to the board committees list is that we show, although the text of the staff report identifies Director Michelson as the current BOSCA representative, our list of committees has Director Coverdale identified in that slot, but it's in fact
They ran me out.
Director Michelson, who started in June 2013 and serves through 2017, June 30th, 2017. So
Yeah.
with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. President.
All right. What I was going to propose, does anybody have any suggestions before I have a sort of a, I went through this and came up with a list, and do you have any thoughts, Ken?
I have a lot of thoughts, actually, but
Could you
specifically
focus on,
this
yeah,
list.
just, sorry, let me rephrase that.
Sorry. You know, the one thing that I was thinking about is I want to be sure, you know, we had Hannigan on finance.
Yeah.
And that was an idea about training, because I've been involved in that for a long time. It'd be really nice to have some fresh blood. And I know both these gentlemen would be fantastic, because they both had a lot of experience with finance and numbers. But I think it'd be really good to at least have one new person on that, if not two. That's up to you. You know, you can decide how to go with that. The only other encouragement that I would have is we have this Montera Mutual Interest Group, which I feel really serious about. So I wouldn't mind continuing beating my head against the wall.
You know, I anticipate, you'll be stunned to hear, I'd anticipated you there, and was, yes.
But I was thinking that we also might start the idea of a committee with SAM as a mutual interest committee, because, you know, given the fact that we may not have any rainfall, recycle water is, I think, gonna really jump up on.
Funny you
radar.
should mention that. That was my
So
that
those
was
are my
my
thoughts.
recommendation as well. That we and
How much time and energy do you want to waste?
Lots, you know. But I'm not taking you to a meeting, man, I know that.
On a board that absolutely will not consider a serious attempt at recycling,
I know,
has put on a dog and pony show,
I know.
bluffed the public with no real intent, spent public monies.
Maybe you would be a good partner in that.
We have to be very careful about what we do with our ratepayers' money, going down blind alleys with a board that really wants nothing to do with recycling. And I'm very, very protective of our ratepayers' money. And I'm not in favor of putting it down a rat hole. You know, unless they reach out to us with sincere intent, I will never support spending this district's money engaging that board until they come to us with a real credible plan. And that's our ratepayers' money. It should be spent on our ratepayers in our district, not pursuing something that we have given them 10 years of opportunity to come to us, and they have not exercised that. No way. I would never vote to spend a dime of this district's money, or 1 minute of our general manager's time in a pursuit of something that they absolutely do not want to do. I've been here for 13 years now, and I've never seen a sincere effort on their part, unless I see a real change. Won't get past me.
Well, that's one person's opinion. I think it's important. Yeah, so all we're talking about is a mutual interest committee. And is that expending money in your opinion?
I think if directors want to, like you said, borrow your words, beat your head against the wall, please feel free to do it again for another year.
I think that it is an important issue. I think that you bring up a really valuable point, that if it's not going anywhere, we shouldn't be fooling ourselves. But I would not want us to be, I wouldn't want us to put ourselves in a position that we're not making ourselves available to it. But what you're
March
saying
of
loud
what
and
year did
clear
we
is-
send a letter to Sam? 2011, maybe?
No, 9, I think,
9?
or 10.
So we're coming up on March of multiple years and have yet to receive a response from them? We've been waiting 2, 3, 4 years?
Well, we might have some public enthusiasm, to
Yeah.
give
I
a
mean,
little support to the idea.
And it may be that the limit of our effort is merely to resend a follow-up letter and say, we stand ready to move forward with this, which I think is a reasonable step, but as you point out, you're right, we don't want to spend money on something that isn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
But
I think,
But a follow-up letter. Well, the point of this meeting is to assign our board,
yeah,
our committee chairs.
yeah, so if it's, board members are free to do what they like. I'm just very protective of staff
Fair
time
enough.
and staff monies and.
Yeah, no,
ratepayers'
that's
monies.
a fair historical comment. What I was going to suggest was that Director Glassberg, would you be interested in joining the Finance Committee?
Sure.
With Director Coverdale? And Director Coverdale, would you consider the Water Quality Committee? Would that be of value to you?
I
No?
don't think I'm the right guy for that. really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a Director Michelson, are you up for staying on that committee? Water Quality Committee?
They tied in with, I felt, with water resources, and yes, so
Okay.
I do see the tie-in, and I also would like some new blood. I mean, if I could
I
have.
was looking left when the question came up. Yeah, gentlemen.
I'll jump in.
All
I'll do
right.
the water quality.
All right.
And I agree with, there is a tie-in with the water resources as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd be willing to do that one.
Then Human Resources.
Can I make a request?
Yeah.
Could I have a? I would like to put some fresh eyes on human resources and.
And you come off Human Resources?
No, I would like to request Mr. Glassberg join me on that. Director Glassberg, if he'd be willing, and just because he comes from, a background where he probably more than likely has dealt with human resources issues at school districts.
You okay with that? All right.
So,
I
I think that's one that's,
yeah.
it's long overdue for a meeting.
Yep. I would agree.
Thank you.
Water Resources. What I was thinking there, I was actually going to jump in to Resources, but I'm open to. Do you want?
Well, Director Flint was saying that if there was a.
Oh,
time,
right,
he might
I'm
be
sorry,
on
put
both.
Flint, okay, so it'd be Flint.
Maybe we could
Or, if you, because resources is really gonna get some play this year, the way it's looking.
Uh-huh.
If you wanna bring, if you could bring, outside information from other districts relative to, to drought allocations,
Yeah.
I hate to
Yeah,
be
no,
that
that's-
pessimistic, but
yeah.
we may very,
Yeah,
the times, we did meet last year, when it wasn't looking so good, and
why don't I start by putting my name down on that one for Water Resources Committee and
That's
keep,
fine.
is that all right?
oh, absolutely.
You okay with that one?
Yeah.
All right. Facilities, would you be interested in stepping in, both of you, toward them? Any other thoughts on that?
You good?
Who did I have down? Facilities, I was going to actually, would you be up for that?
Sure.
All right, I'll put you down for that. All right. Montera,
Anybody got a helmet?
yeah,
You know what? I'll join you on that one.
okay.
Oh, I know, that I couldn't believe
All right, you're on.
I just want to see what it,
Yeah, flak jackets are issued. All right, the other,
it.
opening,
Who went on that one?
uh,
Oh, good.
Director
That's the-
Flint.
I was hoping Flint.
And then, special
He's a
districts,
door opener.
California special districts, and yeah. Are you, either of you familiar with the special districts committees?
Only that I've read the.
Yeah,
journal
so
articles,
it's
yeah.
an association of special districts, which fall into a unique category in California. They're not the state, they're not a city. The meetings are beneficial in that learning how other groups are doing. Sometimes it's less applicable because it's a group like a hospital that doesn't seem quite as tight. But sometimes it's very innovative, or they've come up with something clever. The demand is fairly low in that it's an infrequent meeting. And I believe the special districts group meets in Redwood City, if I'm not mistaken. And it's every couple of months for an hour. And I assure you the donuts are absolutely low fat, so. I'm thinking here, either one of you, who,
I'm certainly willing to.
okay, all right, just consider it done,
Cool.
all right?
I'm gonna let you continue on right there, okay? Not that I have a choice.
In that one, yeah, so we're,
It's a tag team.
so,
Oh, my God.
Bob's we're rewriting as Director
Or a
Mickles.
rubber stamp for Willie Brown.
Okay, so, Joanne, are you the keeper?
We should be fine with that.
Can you pass that down to Joanne?
And do we, just a question about process, do we ever have an alternate in the event we're unable to attend a meeting out of the
I
area?
would
or-
feel it comfortable that you could call any of the other directors and certainly,
For
Special
which,
districts,
for
or
which,
what?
for what, are you talking about?
his comment was if a director, if he was indisposed and couldn't make a meeting, could he call on another director to attend in his place?
So is that for the external organizations or for the standing committees?
An excellent question.
Well, my thought was the external, only because with a standing committee, we could always rearrange a date or something. I'm assuming.
Because there are Brown Act issues with
That's-
alternates for standing committees. But it would depend on whether, I think that's okay for, certainly for Aqua and CSDA.
No action is taken at those in terms of it's merely an information collection sort of thing.
For external or committees?
For external.
Yeah, I think for externals, that's okay.
Yeah.
Can't have three of us.
But I
for
would not do
internal.
that
Right.
for committees without.
No, yeah, but those, as you say, really aren't you'd reschedule. The donuts would go stale at the external meetings, so they can't
No,
reschedule.
certainly not.
Okay.
Cool. Good job. Way to be organized.
Well, I literally can't read it.
And at the risk of being controversial, Director Flint and I may strategize a way to open up some doors, and if we do, we'll come back and chat
Perfect.
it up with you. How's that?
Perfect. So then we have our water shortage contingency planning presentation.
There we go. Now we got something to talk
Yeah, it's interesting how maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, you weren't hearing much about water shortage in the news, and now it's hard to turn on the news or read the paper without seeing it. So it's definitely a current topic. It's one that's important for us. the weather tonight has defied my prediction. Usually when I talk to the board and try to get some energy on water shortage planning,
It rains.
rains. In fact, it pours. That's the general rule. And
My trick is to buy paint.
yeah, I've been telling the staff,
Tear the roof off.
it's gonna rain. This is, this was one of the surefire ways of getting it to rain, but it hasn't worked for us this time. I had a little bit more ambitious agenda for tonight, and in my meeting last week with President Reynolds, we talked about, this, kind of the scope of this issue, how much we have to cover, and his suggestion was that we should consider holding a focused board work session, a special meeting, just on drought contingency plan, drought planning, water shortage planning. I think that's a great idea. As we get into this, I think we'll all realize it's a big subject. If we're lucky, I guess, and that's what everybody in the water industry is hoping, if we're lucky, we won't have to deal with this as an emergency between now and the 1st of July. Even if it starts to rain, we shouldn't say, oh, gosh, the problem is over. We can go back, we can go back to business as usual and kind of put this on the back burner where it's been. It's been on the back burner for us and a lot of other water utilities. Now everybody's thinking about it, but there's this long-term element to it that we need to really address. And I think that would be a good session for the board to have, to talk about kind of our long-term water shortage planning. And that has elements of our capital improvement program. If you look at our plan to replace our software, if you look at the question of automatic metering, those are all related to this water shortage contingency planning. And I think we have to keep telling ourselves that the probability of a drought, of water shortage, is 100%. We know it's going to happen, but we just don't know when. So as we go through some of this, we'll be thinking about both short and long-term actions that we're going to need to take. But I thought it would be useful tonight just to go through some of the basics of how a water shortage would happen here for us as customers of SFPUC. What determines how much water we get. We're lucky not to be in the kind of situation that San Juan Water District, I mentioned earlier, is, where their intakes in Folsom Lake are going to be out of the water. We're really in pretty good shape as a customer of San Francisco. But there are sort of defined steps that lead up to what could be a declaration of water shortage by San Francisco. Last time this happened was in 2007. San Francisco asked for voluntary conservation measures, and they could do that again, or they can ask, or they can say it's an emergency and we're cutting the supply back. So I thought it'd be useful to kind of go through how that works, especially since we have some new folks here. And I find myself having to go back and reread a lot of this stuff so that I can figure out again how it works. So San Francisco, the method by which San Francisco would allocate water supply in the event of a drought is specified in our water supply agreement. The water supply agreement is the contract between San Francisco and the collective, the 26 agencies that are wholesale customers of San Francisco. And that agreement we renegotiated, and it went into place in 2009. So there are two levels of allocation. Tier 1, what's called Tier 1, is the allocation between San Francisco retail customers and the wholesale customers collectively. So that's the first step in allocating a reduced water supply. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Tier 2 is an allocation formula among the BOSCA wholesale customers that was approved by unanimous agreement of the agencies in BOSCA. Kind of an interesting process for anybody who is at BOSCA or involved in that. So this is how Tier 1 works, and it's specified as fixed percentages. The water supply agreement has language that covers water shortages or water cutbacks, basically up to 20%. Beyond a 20% cutback by SFPUC, the terms of the water supply agreement don't apply. We're in a new, kind of in a new world there. But up to 20%, this specifies how the water would, how the reduced supply would be allocated between San Francisco retail customers and the wholesale customers. Now, the wholesale customers in normal times use about 2/3 of the water produced by the San Francisco system. So these Tier 1 allocations represent a little bit more of a hit to the wholesale customers than to the San Francisco retail customers. But on average, San Francisco retail customers have very low per capita water use. It's an urban environment that have a lot of landscaping, so they're less able to cut back, at least so the theory goes, than the wholesale customers. So this is the first level of allocation. The Tier 2 allocation process, what can I say? It's complicated. It's a process that has, and it was the result, because it needed to be unanimous. This was a very interesting process at Bosca that took over a year, actually, to work this formula out. Under the water supply agreement, it had to be unanimously approved by the wholesale customers. Otherwise, San Francisco would make this determination itself. And the Bosca agencies, as much as they may have been uncomfortable with some of the aspects of this allocation formula, felt that going along with it or making it to their liking would be preferable to have San Francisco unilaterally impose these allocations on the wholesale customers. So what Bosca agencies came up with over this 12-month process with what I can only describe as immense patience of the Bosca staff in going back and figuring out how to, in each case, how to address the concerns of various agencies. We ended up with a process that has, I think, 7 steps. It's kind of like the most complicated IRS form you could imagine, where you add line 12 to line 14, then subtract that from line 15, and if it's greater than 10% of line 18, it has 7 steps, and the first step in that process has 7 steps. So it's complicated. It incorporates its basic approach is to look at base and seasonal use. So base use is the use during the winter months, and seasonal use is more irrigation. It's use during the summer months. It incorporates individual supply guarantees. There's some agencies in Bosca whose use is well below their individual supply guarantees, and they felt it was, so those are the agencies that feel it's very important that it's not just their current use, but what they may be entitled to in the system that's going to be important. There are limits. There were limits to the cutbacks that could be imposed because the formulas that they came up with ended up imposing very large cutbacks on some agencies and negative cutbacks on others. And there are also hardship adjustments. Hardship adjustment mostly applies to East Palo Alto, which for various reasons finds itself in a very difficult position. And Bosca is currently updating the calculations. The last time they did it was, I think, 2010, based on water use data up through fiscal year 08-09. So they're currently updating them. So we don't know what the exact numbers are, but we know the process, and we had kind of the ballpark. So the example that we were looking at when we approved this Tier 2 allocation plan, looked at a 20% SFPUC supply reduction. That translates into about a 27% overall wholesale reduction as a result of the Tier 1 formula. And the Bosca agency cutbacks ranged from 13% to 47%. So from well above and well below the overall average cutback. Where we ended up was at just slightly higher than the average at about 28%. So that would have given us, had that formula been implemented then, it would have given us about 1.42 MGD. Now today's use is on average, our 12-month average shown in this month's report is 2.07 MGD. So 1.42, a number like 1.42 would be a very significant cutback for us. It would be a real hardship. But 20% is a pretty big cutback for San Francisco. So that would be about a 30%. That would be about 30% of our water. We have used over the last 3 years a very high proportion of San Francisco water because Denniston has been out of operation. That'd probably help us a little bit in this allocation formula. But the whole thing was designed to prevent gaming the system as some agencies might have considered. Or it's always the principles on which it was based, which had a lot of discussion involved, not providing any incentives for trying to build up your allocation through various strategies. And it does take into account the fact that many agencies have alternative sources of supply. Unfortunately for us, and I guess we're probably not too different from other agencies in this respect, our alternative source of supply in year 3 of a drought is pretty minimal. We're not going to be able to get much water out of Denniston in the 3rd year of a drought. And our current numbers kind of reflect that. Okay, so one of the things that has been a little bit of a mystery, and still is somewhat of a mystery, but I know a little bit more about it now. How will SFPUC determine whether they're going to tell us there's a shortage? How do they look at that? We got an explanation of that last week from Ellen Levin, who's the deputy manager for water system operations. They're going to give us their first look at the supply on February 1st, and she did some comparisons of 2007 and this year. And this year is not looking that great compared to 2007 when they did ask for voluntary, but there's some other differences as well. They factor in total system storage, both Hetch Hetchy and local. They look at the 12-month total demand. Right now, the 12-month total demand is running an average of 222 million gallons a day. In 2007, it was 256, so that has been a major factor in they're taking a little more, I guess, wait and see approach than they might have in 2007. They feel a little more it gives us a little more working room to be using whatever that is, 10 to 20% less water. They have an 800 they take those factors into account, and they project July 1st total system storage, and their warning level is 860,000 acre feet. And they actually have there's a lot of sophistication in their projection models. But, went to the end, wrong team. Let's see here. So here's total system storage. You see this each month in the hydrologic conditions report. Total system storage is a little over 1 million acre feet right now. So they're about 170,000 acre feet above their warning level. So they're in fairly decent shape. That's about 72% of total system storage. In 2007, when they asked for voluntary conservation, they were at about a little over 80% at this point in the year. So we're not quite as good, but the use is lower. where things, so this is a graph of what that looks like. This is sort of, this graph kind of goes from the left side to the right side, then continues for water year 2014. So you can see it's a continual trend down in terms of the total water stored in the system. There's not much coming in. There's very little coming in because there's no snow. So that's one of their factors. Hetchy precipitation, not looking great. We're right on we're right on the dry year, the water year 1977. Now, at the same time that they say that, they say, well, you know, it would just take 4 storms to get us back into some kind of more normal range. But, you know, how likely is that? Well, it's possible. It can happen. We've had in the past, we've had the miracle March, we've had the rainy February, and everybody is hoping we'll get that reprieve. But there's where we are right now. Local system precipitation is looking pretty dismal. We're at 17% of normal year to date for Pillarcitos. And right now, there's no water in Pillarcitos for us. The water is below the level at which we can get any water from Pillarcitos, unfortunately.
Recycled water's looking pretty good.
So, no good news there. And so we'll hear on February 1st. So what San Francisco does, they take all that into account. They look at the worst case, which would be a dry year. If we get the dry year amount of precipitation and runoff between now and July 1st, and we're using water at the rate of 222 million gallons a day, how much water will they have in storage? I don't know, my unsophisticated calculation says they wouldn't hit 860,000. But they also have to worry about, well, what if this is just year 3 of a 5-year drought? You know, we don't want to use too much in the coming year and then really put ourselves in serious hardship in subsequent years of a drought. So there are all kinds of considerations. For all of us, there's always the concern that, you know, we don't want to say the sky is falling when it's not. You know, we don't want to unnecessarily alarm people about the possibility of a drought. The more we do that, the less responsive they're going to be when we really have a drought. We also create for ourselves, possibly unnecessarily, the problem that as people start to fear the drought, they use less water and our revenue goes down. And don't think water utilities don't think about that, because we do. We need the revenue, even though we want people to use water efficiently. The revenue is very important to us. So we're waiting for San Francisco to do that. They're going to give us the first look on February 1st. And then we have a meeting with, the wholesale customers have a meeting with San Francisco February 13th, which is our annual meeting. They promised us they will update the February 1st projection with the February 1st snowpack assessment at our meeting on February 13th. So far the snowpack assessments have been pretty dismal. Yeah, the guys are wearing hiking shoes instead of the cross-country skis. Here's the schedule. February 1st, they give us an initial estimate. March 1st, a revised estimate of available water supply. April 15th or sooner, they issue a final estimate of available water supply, and they determine the amount of water available to the wholesale customers. It's basically something they do every year. It's pretty routine. Between April 15th and 31st, if that assessment of the supply warrants, they formally declare a water shortage emergency, and they declare the need for voluntary or mandatory rationing. And then we go through this process of BOSCA submitting to SFPUC this calculation of the Tier 2 allocations. And then, so all this beginning in April, all this starts to roll pretty quickly. If we don't, if there's going to be a shortage. From April 25th to May 10th, they determine the individual shortage allocations, and we get a monthly water budget based on our allocation and our pattern of monthly use. It's important to realize, and we can comment on that, we can have them shift the monthly allocations around, but it's also important to know that our allocation is really an annual allocation. The monthly overages and underruns are sort of trued up at the end of the fiscal year. So they recognize that in the initial months you'd probably go over and you'd be catching up. And during this time between mid-April, when they say there's going to be a shortage, and July 1st, when these allocations actually go into effect, supposedly they're going to be determining what the rate structure will be. And then that trickles down on all of us, and we'll have to adjust our rates. Between May 8th and May 24th, we have a chance to comment on our monthly water budget and submit alternatives. June 1st, they issue final allocations. July 1st, the budgets become effective. August 30th would be the first time we'd see the excess use charges on our monthly bills. In the last mandatory rationing go-round at San Francisco, which I think was in the 70s, the excess use charges ranged up to 7 times the wholesale rate. Excess use charges are meant to incentivize staying within the allocations. They're not like punitive damages that go to San Francisco. The water supply agreement requires that they be applied to the wholesale revenue requirement, so that they actually in some way come back. Although if we pay excess use charges, we'd be potentially, one way to look at it is be subsidizing the water that other folks get. Those would come back to us, but not in proportion to what we paid. And then the excess use charges do not appear on bills until a year later. So after that annual accounting, at the end of the fiscal year, the excess use charges, if any, would appear on our would start to appear on our August bill. And I assume they would go by month, but I'm not quite sure how that works. I'll have to look at that. So that's how the process works with SFPUC. Now, what do we do with that reduced allocation? We have a water shortage contingency plan that we approved in April of 2011 that specifies how we'd allocate water. Residential customers get a gallon per capita per day allowance. And as we impose increasing levels of cutback, we maintain that gallons per capita per day at least a level needed for health and safety, and that's a number around 35 gallons per person per day. Non-residential customers are allocated a percentage of usage in a base period, a prior period. So they would be told that they have to cut back to, say, 90% of their use in the base period. And then the non-residential cutbacks vary by sales class. So for instance, turf irrigation would be one of the first things to go. Skylawn, water to Skylawn, Skylawn's our largest customer. Water to Skylawn, I think, would have to be cut before any other customer takes a reduction, because by law we're only allowed to serve Skylawn with surplus water because they're out of our jurisdictional boundaries. So this is, I don't put this up here talk about the details, but this is the table that's in our current water shortage contingency plan that shows how the various sales classes are going to be cut back. Now, the numbers in this table they were created through what was solely a spreadsheet exercise, basically. The staff sat down and said, well, what's a reasonable way to do this? But cutbacks, when you get up into stage 3 and higher, the cutbacks contemplated here are life-threatening for businesses. They'll have a tremendous impact on both residential and non-residential customers. There are water use levels at which you can't maintain outdoor landscaping, in which you may have a very substantial investment. There are levels of cutback that threaten the survival of businesses. The other thing you'll see in this table is that the cutbacks vary by sales class, and those relative cutbacks were arbitrary and haven't been subjected, even though we had a public hearing to allow the opportunity for folks to comment on these allocations and on the allocation scheme. Nobody came to that public hearing. Not a surprise for us. People don't, the idea of drought cutbacks in 2011, which was one of our wettest years in a long time, a little too abstract for most folks to dedicate much time or concern to. But I think we can be confident that as we approach a time when we might have to go to businesses and say, you need to cut back your water use by 10% or 20%, or we're going to charge you, 7 or 10 times the water rate that you normally pay. I mean, you'd be paying at 7 times, you'd be paying $60 a unit for water instead of 8, and 8's already pretty high. So these are real. When we get to the point where these are no longer abstract, people should be very concerned about them. So that kind of leads to, what do we have to do? In order to manage in a mandatory rationing regime, we have there are a lot of details that we have to be able to address. And we're not prepared for a lot of them. We're going to have to be prepared if we go into that mode. But in thinking about the kinds of policy issues that the board needs to address and hear the public on, I think these are the main ones. We need to review the drought allocation approach with our customers and reach out to them and seek some public input, so that when nobody's going to be happy with this. And the stories I've heard from the folks that went through this last time, the general manager that went through it last time, that you couldn't even go to the grocery store. I mean, people were so angry about water rationing that it was very difficult. And I think we can anticipate that there are going to be a lot of unhappy people. When those unhappy people come to the board, I think it's important that the board at that point has already provided them the best possible opportunities to understand, why we're doing what we're doing, and that we've done it in a way that's transparent and in an attempt to be as fair and equitable as possible in managing our water supply. So I think that's one of the things we need to do is turn this from a spreadsheet exercise into something where we've heard and thought about the real impacts that this will have on people and their lives and their businesses. Another significant task is establishing drought water rates that really do two things. One is they help us manage the demand. That's one of the tools, not the best one, but they'll help us manage the demand. And the main thing is that we need to keep the district financially whole. You know, as soon as we cut, our costs are 80% variable, fixed, and 20% variable. So that means that when people use 10% less water, we gotta make up, our costs don't go down 10%. We've gotta make that revenue back up with an offsetting rate increase. And there will be substantial expenses that we incur in managing our way through a drought. We're gonna need a couple of more customer service people, for example, to field the hundreds, if not thousands, of calls we get from folks who get their water bills that are too high, or, you know, say they've got, you know, one or two more people in their household than our allocation gives them credit for, you know, whatever. That's been the experience of most water agencies that go through this. We're going to need, if we have to do this year, we're going to need additional meter readers so that we can go to monthly billing from bi-monthly billing. Those kinds of things. So there are a lot of those details that we're going to need to handle, and that's just kind of the start. At this point, with every day that goes by where we don't get any rain, we're losing sleep about, you know, how are we going to get ready? What are we going to do? Then we do our rain dance. If it starts to rain, we say, whew, you know, we don't. But these are things that we are really going to need to focus on. If San Francisco gives us the warning that we could go into mandatory rationing, I think getting ready will become kind of the main focus of staff effort between whenever that happens and the 1st of July. So we've already taken some steps. We've solicited proposals from rate consultants, and we're pretty much ready to go on a rate study, one of the essential pieces. We have looked at the problems with our software, which we've discussed with the board. There's no realistic prospect that we can get a new software package in place before July 1st. This is, you know, in sort of the nature of the long-term agenda. If we have until 2015, if the drought doesn't happen until 2015 or later, we have time to put a new and more capable software package in place. If we have to go into a drought billing regime sooner than that, we're going to have to try to do it with our existing software. And there's some alternatives for that. They say they're going to do it for us, but then the line goes dead and they don't talk to us for a few months. So that's the challenge Kathleen's been dealing with. I don't think she has. I don't think Kathleen would put much money on the prospects of Springbrook software doing what we need. But we're just going to, whatever happens, we're just going to have to deal with that. But the main thing in talking about what we'd like to do with the board, the main thing that we want to do, I think, is to, when we go into the drought allocation regime and people start coming to the board meetings to object to how we're managing things, we'd like to have had those issues come up before and be considered by the board before, you know, we're in that situation. You know, we know people are not going to be happy. There are going to be quite a few people who are not going to be happy, but we're going to have to make the tough decisions about allocations and to do it in the best interest of the district and all of our customers. And we think it's important that the board feel comfortable about the process by which we've we've gotten to that point. And it'll be much, it won't be easy, but I think it'll be better, that'll be a better context in which to receive some of these arrows.
Dave, is 2 weeks enough time to prepare the staff, to prepare for the meeting, for having a workshop meeting?
We'll be ready in some fashion. 2 weeks is pretty aggressive, but I think we need to do it, we should start soon, I think. And that's just going to be the reality for us. So I think if we find a time that's convenient for the board, I wouldn't like to make it sooner than that.
I would agree. My concern is I feel we need to have had our briefing and our workshop prior to the February declaration by San Francisco.
Yeah, February won't be a declaration, it'll just be a, hey.
Statement of intent?
Yeah, be aware, here's what could happen.
Yeah, it's too
Yeah.
early.
You know, but we could get a few big storms and everybody will go back to, no problem.
Except for us, because we'll continue to get prepared for the next year.
Which we should,
When
yes.
we might have a drought, right? Because
Yes.
we're smart enough to know that it's
Yeah,
inevitable.
they're downplaying it at Bosco. I think that's still,
Okay.
we'll wait and see.
But I kind of agree with what you're leaning toward, and that is, it might be good to really try to meet early in February for this workshop. I mean, probably end of January is too soon, but, February 4th or, get on with it, right?
I mean, my thought is if we have a review of what our status is now in terms of going through and discussing the issues with the board in, say, 2 weeks, so not much preparation, but a status quo, so we understand the issues, give it 4 weeks before we then meet again to sort of come up, so we then have a regular board meeting at our next meeting, then in a 2-week interval from that, so 4 weeks from the first one, we could then come back and knowledgeably debate, discuss, work on improvements and changes. And that keeps our meeting schedule on a 2-week space, and it allows us to get the information, go away, think about it, and then come back and work on it.
I'm wondering if it would be helpful in the beginning at our study session, rather than to get into the nuts and bolts of, I've got a bunch of nuts and bolts things here, but rather than to get into that, to talk about a process. What process are we going to use to put together a contingency plan? For instance, do we want to go out and have community meetings and get input from our community before we start making decisions?
I think what my real concern was, I think we definitely want to community outreach is critical to this, but I think it's very important that the board have reviewed what this sort of prior art is, what our current policy is. I think it'd be very important for the board to review what our options are. So, for instance, if one of the options in our toolkit is lowering the water pressure 10%, what will we get back for that? Will we see a 10% water use reduction? Is that something that we can do? Or do we have infrastructure limitations such that that would put customers at too low a pressure, and we don't have that option? What are other utilities doing? What are the advantages and disadvantages of them? And I think that would then get us better prepared. But I would not want to see us go into workshops and work with. So if we get to a point where the drought is significant and we are moving in that direction, it's very important that the board be versed on what the alternatives, and that we've reviewed and thought about our options carefully so that we are able to knowledgeably explain the options and paths and what the pitfalls and advantages are. And I
then get feedback from people.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's why I'm keen to have an accelerated schedule for the board, so that when the meetings do come, if they come, the board then has had the opportunity to get up to be as knowledgeable as we can.
Makes sense.
And I think Ken's suggestion is brilliant, that if we can hold off the drought this year, then we'll be prepared in the future and there won't be a pressure. But it woe is us if the drought does come forward and we haven't reviewed our options carefully. We're standing there in a poor position to advise the community.
I also have one of the kind of a domino effect question, Dave. You mentioned that our operating costs are relatively fixed, and so if usage goes down significantly, it impacts our revenue and impacts our ability to keep our own operation going. Wouldn't the same be true for San Francisco?
Absolutely.
So if we get into a serious drought and everybody has to reduce their usage, at some point, would we anticipate that they're going to raise our rates at the wholesale level in order to be able to meet their fixed costs?
They certainly will. They haven't specified their schedule for doing that, but they can do it. I assume that they will do it by July 1st or close to that. They'll give us a rate structure that both recovers the costs, that recovers the money they'll lose when we buy less water, and imposes these excess use surcharges.
So when we start thinking about our excess use surcharges, we have to take into consideration that
Right.
just the
That
base
has to
price
be-
of water will go up.
That has to be part of our model as well.
The discussion that came up this morning was what the loss of hydroelectric power generating revenue will mean, which is for some of the utilities enormous.
I think our water supply agreement now protects us from,
Does it?
it insulates us from that impact on San Francisco.
But that's a huge.
So we're just looking at water, but think about the rate we pay San Francisco is basically their wholesale revenue requirement divided by the total number of wholesale units sold. And you could anticipate that in a drought, to a large extent, their costs aren't going to go down all that much. They may go up, depending on what they have to do to manage the reduced supply. So their rates, I think, would go up in proportion to the supply reduction.
Ken, you had a comment?
Through the chair, Dave, have you talked to any consultants or put out RFPs or, started to have discussions to get an idea of how long it might take someone to help us in terms of setting up a rate study or setting up?
We have two
drought contingency?
proposals. We haven't awarded, and we have a preferred consultant. They're both proposals are for less than $30,000.
Mhm.
So they don't, at least according to our procedures, they don't require board approval. We're thinking we'd bring the rate consultant to the board to talk about some of the issues. The problem of determining a rate approach when there are so many unknowns is challenging, and then how we design rates that can be that we can implement quickly and still comply with Prop 218 is yet another legal challenge. What if we go through this exercise, can we do a Prop 218 process that would allow us to go ahead with the rate changes, this year, a year from now? Could we build that kind of flexibility into it? There are quite a few issues. They haven't told us how long it would take. It's a kind of a workload issue. We probably should start now. There don't seem to be too many other people obsessing about this at the moment, but that's going to change rapidly, I think.
Holidays are kind of over, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is this if we anticipate that this is not a quick we don't want to rush what we're doing, and it will take a series of times. Is that a reasonable proposal to alternate a meeting in every 2 week for at least 2 weeks I mean, 2 sessions to review this material and work on this?
Works for us.
Okay. Unless anybody has an objection, I'd like to make that request of the general manager that we meet in 2 weeks to a 2-hour meeting and come up to speed, with the assumption that we would then go home with a fair bit of homework for us to then come back and review and move forward in the future.
So that's the 28th of February then, 2 weeks? I
You're
mean, excuse me,
ahead of
January.
You're ahead of me there.
Yeah, the calendar's right there.
Oh, well done. I can't
I
see
forgot
that.
about the glasses thing.
January 28th would be 2 weeks
Yeah.
Okay.
from today.
I mean, one of the things that Dave said in his presentation was that, we shouldn't really create panic in in the minds of our customers. But I don't think being prepared is panic. I mean, I think that it's gonna have serious consequences, even if we had a semi-normal rainfall starting in February, for February, March, and April. It's potentially could be, as dry as last year. And as dry as last year generated, 25% reductions in storage. So, another 25% reduction in storage in the Hetchy system, pretty significant, right? And we've established a lot of thinking about using water from Denniston. Well, Denniston seems to still be trickling through, I think, but who knows, right? Another dry year, the water table, I mean, I don't know if you look at the soils in your garden or the soils in the parks or whatever, I mean, you can just see the dryness of the conditions around us. So that's gotta be having, water table implications, right? So I just think that even if we fall into an equivalent year to last year or a little better than last year, we still better be really ready. And so I just feel that getting ahead of the curve, and, imagine every district's gonna be in this position. So consultants are gonna become extremely busy, and we're gonna be in that runaround hoping for help, unless staff thinks they can produce all this information and recommendations for us without consultants, and I don't think you're gonna hear that. So I just think it's prudent, and, I mean, I'm not knowledgeable enough to figure out a schedule on how to produce those changes. I thought it was in the 80s when we had the drought where we ended up having penalties. And boy, the phone calls that are really fun are the ones where the people are getting penalized for overuse. Oh, gosh. It's pretty serious. The reactions are pretty intense, as I recall. It wasn't just a brick in the water closet.
We good? Move on?
So
All right.
what do you need from us?
Are we gonna have a meeting in 2 weeks?
I'd
Is
like
that
to
the-
request a meeting in 2 weeks.
I'm not sure what new information we're gonna have in 2 weeks.
So then, should we make it 3?
So what's the
We're still gonna be in the month of January, so we're not gonna have any updates from SFPUC.
Well, that's why I was thinking 3. If we go 2 weeks would be the 28th.
Yeah,
But if we
so
go 3 would be the 4th of
So the
February.
28th, I don't see, unless, someone can make a compelling case, we're gonna have really, new information to deal with, based on the timeline I saw. We're not gonna hear from SFPUC.
My thought was not our reaction to San Francisco, but more of an understanding of what our protocol and options are. So in other words, when San Francisco does or doesn't put
And
that
even the February, it's still not gonna, at my most recent Bosque meeting, they're still, optimistic that, like you say,
Might
Dave
snow.
was saying, a few storms will take us out of this dire situation. So I think we do have to be a little careful about creating alarm. The one thing we really need to concentrate on, and it just keeps coming up, the deficiencies in our software. That's something that needs to really be addressed. You know, we can sit here and pontificate, you know, for, you know, meeting after meeting about, you know, whether it's gonna rain or not. What we really need is software that can, deal with, a new rate structure.
Mhm. Well, should we prioritize that? When are we gonna have the software?
Well, that's the $64,000 question we've been asking for quite a while now.
Yeah.
I don't have an off-the-cuff answer to that. I think, you know, we could lay that out.
Yeah, so.
It's not a, changing software is a very significant undertaking that we shouldn't expect to complete in less than, I mean, even if we did it as fast as possible, less than 6 to 9 months.
That's what I was,
So it's-
didn't Alameda County do Springbrook, and wasn't it a almost a year transition?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I
You're such a
remember
Boy Scout who
that,
attends that
that,
school.
I'm pretty sure that Springbrook was what Alameda County went with. They're a Canadian firm, right? Isn't Springbrook
Springbrook's in
Canadian?
Oregon.
Oregon, oh, then different group, but same, yeah.
But that's, if we have until 2015, it's realistic to expect we could make those changes by then. But if we need to go into drought mode sooner than that, we're going to have to work with or around Springbrook.
So should the software be part of our drought planning?
I think it's important to consider, we call it water shortage, but mainly drought, to consider shortage planning sort of a permanent aspect of what we do as a water utility, because the impact, the likelihood of water shortage increases as more people put demands on the systems, as climate change. I mean, you kind of think, well, maybe this is climate change. The weather guys are saying this is the biggest ridge they've ever seen that's keeping the storms out of California. You know, we had NOAA people at the Aqua Conference saying that their models could never have predicted what happened in Colorado, because their models are based on things that have been observed, and nothing like that had ever been observed. So, you know, we're in kind of a new regime. But what I'd like to, I mean, from the staff standpoint, would like to get out of is this cycle of, oh no, we're going to have a drought, we've got a plan, and then we get some rainstorms and we go, whew, and it goes back to, you know, business as usual. And the next time that happens, we're no better prepared than we were the previous time. And, you know, I think that's the typical cycle for water utilities. You know, I think we tend to be in denial until, you know, we're faced with the immediate prospect of kind of a dire emergency. And so, you know, yes, this, as part of the long-term planning, we'd like to address issues like, I think that that advanced metering infrastructure, which has been kind of a controversial subject here, is an essential, in the long term, an essential element of managing water use. And that's one long-term piece, obviously needs to be debated. Another element is this software element, the capabilities of our software. You know, not a simple issue, but an important one to address. The capabilities of our organization. I mean, I think we could be better prepared organizationally to handle
So
these
one
kinds of things.
one question that comes up is if the board's uncomfortable having a full board meeting in 2 weeks, we could do a committee, water resources committee meeting, and start the process at a committee level. But I feel very strongly that the questions need to be asked, the process needs to be hammered out as to what process will follow, and I think we need to review what questions will come in to the public and how we're going to be prepared to discuss those, and even just if we implement these, how that's going to be rolled out needs to be something that needs to be talked about at a board level to make sure that it goes smoothly and cleanly, so that customers feel that their needs are being heard.
Yeah, it seems to me this is worth doing, whether there's a water
Incredibly
shortage or there is no
valuable.
water shortage. That's
Yeah.
the clear message I'm getting.
Yeah.
And so whether we know what San Francisco's gonna do as of February 1st, I'm not sure that's as important as
I would agree.
us moving ahead.
Yeah.
So what's a comfortable date?
To me, I picked the alternating weeks so that it's, it's not so that if it's a 2-week span, then it gives sort of a pace to it that we may need to go through a couple of meetings. Tonight runs long, but if we schedule a sort of series of meetings, then this is small, it's a small bite, we're not here till 11.
So we go for the 28th, 2 weeks? And then we go for the 11th to be just our normal meeting?
Yeah,
And then we go 25th,
yeah.
just as a tentative schedule?
Yeah, as a tentative schedule, yeah.
Is everybody into that?
Yeah. I think, yeah, let's start and see what we got.
Do you want evening meetings, afternoon?
I'm open to an earlier meeting to reduce the overtime on staff, if that's comfortable with the rest of the group. That
Yeah, I
works
can
for
make that
me.
work.
Yeah.
Would like 4 o'clock be better, Dave? Is that a reasonable move forward? Do you have 3 o'clock?
Whatever the board
Chris, where are you at?
prefers.
I would prefer 3.
3 works for me.
Starting at 3 tends to get us out about 5.
I'm liking that a lot.
Does 4 get us out at 5?
That's a little more
I like the way you think.
Depends on the question.
Because, you know how it works.
Yeah.
When you schedule 2 hours,
Yeah.
it gets filled up. You
And-
schedule an hour, it gets done in an hour.
Yep.
I'm fine with 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Let's start
go
with
3.
3 o'clock, and I think Chris is correct, but we won't go past 5. It's a
If we get out 4, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's no problem.
4:30, whatever.
4:30 it is.
Yeah.
All right, and we have a
okay,
water operations. Joe's painted tanks, made water, and replanted the flower beds.
What's the second thing? That's my report. That's good.
I'm hoping he doesn't go to the landscape.
No, yeah, it is getting late. The Tank 2 renovation, El Granada Tank 2 renovation is entered into phase 2, where we're doing the actual mechanical work on the tank. The system is operating good. The temporary tank system is operating well. We had a little glitch this weekend when the power failed in El Granada, and so we didn't have a level indication. But the demand wasn't as great as we thought. There was water in the tank. We were okay. We have since put a UPS system, an unlimited power supply system, on that one level indicator, so that if it ever occurs again, we will always know what the level of the tank is. So that's progressing well. Avenue Cabrillo pipeline project, the pipe is in the ground. We are in the process of transferring services at this time. And it'll be this project will be complete by the end of January. The only other thing that I think worth mentioning is that we are flushing the system. I know we've been talking about the drought all day, and now I'm saying, oh, we're flushing the system. Flushing, as you know, is an important maintenance item for the system. We've been getting some brown and colored water complaints whenever hydrants are being used in the area, and we are actually in the 5th year of a 5-year cycle of flushing. We started a number of years ago with El Granada, and El Granada is actually dirty again. We have to start up with that again, but we'll see what happens here. But all of
quick question
Half Moon Bay is
on the
pretty much
flushing. How many gallons do you think we let go when we flush?
done.
Per hydrant.
flush.
Per hydrant. Per flush.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's probably 2,000, 3,000.
That's-
And per day.
That's a little less than a water truck.
Per day, though, yeah, well, that's a good point there.
Maybe we should give the guys with portable meters a map. Next time they want to fill up a water truck, why don't they pull water from the next hydrant we're about to flush, put it in a water truck and set it down the gutter?
That's,
Let them do the
that-
flushing for us?
That is an option, but flushing is quite intricate, and there's a lot of coordination going on there, and timing is somewhat of the essence. To coordinate it with a
Well,
contractor
here we
that
just
needs
spent
to
how
do
much
it.
time talking about how precious a resource water is, and now we're just like, it's okay to, just saying. You know, we're
sure-
gonna meet every 2 weeks now to discuss this, you know, impending
I'm
crisis.
sure we could do it. The progress of flushing would be significantly slower, but sure, there's a way to come up with something. Get a Baker tank or something and park it somewhere and store that, and anybody can come over there and get water for free. There's a number of things outside of the box type of ideas that we could use.
Just trying to make a point. Okay, thanks. You know, I did have a question though. I heard a reference to a pump not working at Denison.
Yes, this was the return wash water pump. The pump.
So
that
this
had-
was a new pump then?
This is one of the last. This was not part of the project. Near the end of the project, when we were constructing it, we had thought we would be able to get by without replacing the return wash water system, but as it turns out that we needed to replace
So
it.
it's not a new pump that we recently purchased?
It is a new pump that we
Okay.
recently purchased, but the spec kind of got mixed up, and they sent us a pump that or a motor that runs the pump that runs off of 460, and there's not 460 available at Denniston. So we had to take that pump.
We
and-
have some
and brought it-
expensive consultants working out there that should have caught that.
We had to bring it over to Hayward to
Do
get
we
it
know any?
rewired.
Yeah. Okay.
So that'll be back, and actually, that will
Just
be
making a
back.
point that I'm paying attention.
Good, thank you.
Thanks.
Wasn't that the rare and endangered pump that had to be the matching part?
Oh, that was a Siemens one.
that was the
Siemens.
pump, yeah.
Oh, geez.
Don't get
We
us
don't want
started.
to, yeah, that's.
Oh, wait,
still
you
a
know, while
controversial
I'm on a roll,
Great.
since we're gonna meet every 10 minutes now, let's kind of maximize our local sources here. I see, you know, relative to the nitrate sampling. Well 2 is out of service. Well 4 is not running due to severe iron bacteria growth. Were those producers at any one time? Any
They were
significant-
always minimal producers,
Okay,
and that's
those,
why
I know,
never
I
paid
know
much
there were
attention.
some out there that were never really great producers. so
Yes, yes. 3, we could squeak by with 3. 5 has some nitrate in it, but we can use that because we would, of course, dilute it with the rest of the pumps, and that does go get treated.
'Cause that-
9 is a good producer.
Because that's, you know, if we want to be proactive and really get ahead of the curve, it's just really have all of our local sources, you know, ready to go when SFP, if and when,
Yeah,
when.
pump number
When
2 is, well number 2
SFPC
is
cuts us
ready to
back,
be
we want to be
refurbished.
able to flip those switches and maximize local production. Cool. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
We done?
Maybe you could store that overflow in those hydrants.
Yeah. Maybe we could recharge the groundwater.
All right.
That's an option. Isn't there one more report here?
Did we have one more?
Water resources.
Water resources.
Oh, sorry. I thought she gave us our, yeah, I thought we had the grim news.
You told me one step
I'm sorry, I should have kept my picture.
I will skip the snow survey. I don't want to read it.
Thank you.
I think we've talked that to death. But there is one update on the clothes washer rebate. So as of January 1st, the eligibility requirements and rebate amounts have changed on our clothes washer, high efficiency clothes washer rebate program. And in the staff report, we have a table that outlines that. So basically what we consider tier 3 machines will be only getting a $50 rebate, and then the Energy Star most efficient machines will be getting a $200 rebate.
All right.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any director agenda items? We won't bring up Chris's request for more meetings.
Somebody is paying attention.
Set up a subcommittee about meeting days.
Yes, yes, review meetings. All right, I adjourn the meeting.
Pretty reasonable, 9:15 is horrible,
9:15.
right?